One.
Welcome back, everybody, to Owl Nest after 1 week of chaos. I think especially Thursday's matches can only be described as chaos and pred booming. I believe that Thursday consists...
I think the right word, the word you're looking for, is exciting.
Thursday was exciting. The entire weekend was exciting. Even matches that matches that weren't upsets were still close for the most part. But it was not a good weekend for anybody's predictions. I don't think anybody was safe. Nobody.
But when none of us is safe, all of us is safe.
That is one way. I guess that is one way to look at it.
I've just got to say, this week worked out fine for me. I was happy with that. I out-preded you.
Yeah, by one. I mean, it didn't look too great, though. I mean, this was the lowest pred percentage, correct pred percentage in terms of, like, mass preds that either of us has had. Like, I'm pretty sure you had, like, a 1 in 3 week, but that was, like, with 4 preds. But with, like, 13 preds, and we both only get, like, 7 and 8 correct out of...
Yeah, it was...
Because I went 7 and 6 and you went 8 and 5. Like that was there were so many upsets.
Yeah, it was crazy. I remember after the Boston Atlanta game, I texted you and I was like, 4 in a row.
Yeah, 4 in a row.
Where the higher ranked team lost to the lower ranked team.
You started the weekend 0 and 4, I think.
Yeah, it was not good.
Your first correct pred, I believe, was shock justice.
Yeah,
and even that one almost wasn't. Whoops.
Yeah, it was. I think people are freaking out about this week.
Yeah,
I look at everyone's YouTubes and stuff like that. Like, this is YouTube content week where everyone's like
farming the upsets.
Yeah, which. They've got a point. It was kind of a crazy week.
It was
but
I
don't think it was
week.
completely unexpected, is the big thing.
No, there were some that were more unexpected than others. Like Florida beating Spitfire was like, that was kind of expected. You know, that was a coin toss. But like Boston beating Atlanta, that came out of nowhere. Glad's going 0 and 2. It's like there maybe was a universe in which that happened, but it was like, what? It was weird, but we've got a whole lot to talk about, so enough dilly-dallying. So the first, and this is probably the most news that we've had in a single week, mainly being because the Overwatch League trade deadline is this Thursday, the 18th, which essentially just says that after the 18th, any players, that is the deadline from which Overwatch League teams can trade players between each other, and any player that is dropped after that, I don't believe can be picked up for the remaining of this season. So. I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, but I know that players can't be traded between teams, and then I know that the Contenders roster lock deadline is also this week. So teams are scrambling to finish up their rosters. First one we're going to start with is New York. This happened last week after we recorded before matches start. So first off, they released Myungbong. Unfortunately, the social media team was told to do something before Myungbong was told. So Myungbong found out he was released via tweet.
That's so bad.
They deleted the tweet and apologized with another tweet, but then during their Houston match posted a victory post that had Myungbong on it and then deleted. It wasn't great. At least Adam was told via Discord he was released before it was like made public. Myungbong wasn't even told. People blame
New York.
Some people blame the social media team. No, it wasn't the social media team. It was the higher ups that told them to tweet it.
I don't think the social media team should be told before the player.
Nope. It was
it's just asking for something like this to happen.
Yeah, the social media team were not the ones that messed up. It was definitely upper management. But Myungbong was released. I mean, it was double main support meta, not a whole lot to be said. But then they signed a main support. I didn't know New York were capable of doing such a thing, but they signed a main support. They signed Ansun Jae, who was on the Defiant last year, if I recall correctly. And apparently a main support was all they were missing to be a main support and firing their head coach. Look at that. And suddenly New York are actually what they were supposed to. We got the New York we were promised this week. Now, granted, they did that during the mid-season madness, so who knows But Ansun Jae performed great, and them being able to have a main support now means that they don't have to.
Well, it opens up a lot of opportunities.
Well,
they
don't have to put Gangnam Jin on Lucio anymore,
Yeah.
which is good. So those were New York's changes, but those happened last week before matches started. Another team that had some changes was my team, who signed Doge and Lep from Contenders. Lep being a main tank, Doge being a main support. Lep did play. They both played this week. Doge played in the first match, but he was on ping, and then he didn't play the other one. Lep played this week and performed great on the main support.
Yeah,
which
and
was
I think
nice.
Doge on the main tank or on the Junker Queen looked really solid,
despite being on like 200 ping from Europe.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, I think good pickups for the Outlaws. It kind of fills the holes that they had, because this was kind of the main conversation when it came to the Outlaws coming into this week. Was
they're good, but they have holes.
They're good, but are they going to be able to play the meta? And this kind of opens up pretty much every meta to them for the most part.
For the most part, they've got a lot of things covered, and it does. I think these two pickups are definitely more long term. There's no way they just picked up these two for the remainder of the season. I think that this is probably going to be moving into next season as well, and it also signifies that they want to go back more to a Western roster as opposed to just having Dante. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows, because they did also announce the release of Piggy, which, I mean, from certain standpoints is understandable. Other standpoints, it's like unfortunate, because I mean, Piggy essentially got benched by Dante, which doesn't feel great. But Piggy wasn't performing the best this season. He was performing better towards the latter half of the midseason madness, but in the Outlaws, it seems like money may not be a big thing that they have a lot of, and so Piggy just basically being almost always on the bench, and Dante basically playing the heroes that Piggy. I mean, unless the Outlaws unless we go into a Sigma meta, like a hard off tank meta where like Doomfist is unplayable, I think it's the Outlaws made an okay decision. Granted, like Pelican wasn't very happy about it, and he did tweet about something like, "Just hang on, I'll come join you soon." So, I mean, and Pelican joined the Outlaws because Piggy was on there. So, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Pelican left the Outlaws at the end of the season, unfortunately.
Yeah. That being said, it's like, it makes sense, because if you look at when Piggy played, was he like outstanding?
Not really.
This year? Not really. And the thing is whereas you have tank players that can play, every tank character out there, and that's kind of what the world's shifting to, is tank players that can cover all those holes and within the same map change from, an off tank to a main tank if needed. And I think, when you threw Piggy in, you knew exactly what Piggy was playing. And it wasn't always the best in the world. And that's not anything bad against Piggy. It's just the game is different this year than it was last year. And it playing tank is different, and I think Piggy's one of the victims of that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't really know what kind of team would need what Piggy has to offer. Is just a solo off tank.
Yeah,
I would love to see him on another team, but I don't know who would pick him up, and that it's just unfortunate. Maybe teams pick him up because they want Pelican, and it's like used as a bargaining chip to get Pelican. I don't know. But the Outlaws now are kind of without an off-tank player, but honestly, with how this season is going, it doesn't look like that's going to be a problem. I mean, they operated without a main tank player, and they're fourth in the NA standings. So, clearly they're doing something right. On to the next team. Team 1 to start the blow-up process. Paris Eternal released everybody but their DPS line. Dawn, Vistola, Dredro, and Khan all were released.
Yeah.
I mean, they were 1 and 12.
Yeah, I don't think this comes as any like
1 and 12. I mean, they've won win.
It sucks to see this in the middle of the season, just in a human standpoint, but from like a gameplay standpoint, they were obviously underperforming.
I think the biggest thing for me is, why did they wait till now and they didn't do it during the literal 4-week break they had? I don't understand why they waited so long, because there's rumors that they're going to... Oh, well, they already picked up people. Why am I saying rumors? anyways, like the team wasn't doing very well, so them getting dropped, it's like, yeah, as you said, it sucks from a people perspective, but from an organizational perspective, yeah, they just weren't performing. So they then signed from contenders. They signed Malthol. They also signed Krawi, and then they signed Rakatak, and they signed Lucamino. So they signed 2 new supports, an off-tank player, and another DPS. And honestly,
you go
I
ahead.
mean, these players have been playing the Junker Queen meta in contenders, so.
Well, and one of the interesting things about this is Paris is going to be in NA next year, right?
And they now have a
Like,
complete
they are,
American
and
roster.
now they have a complete American roster. They got rid of all of their European players. So I think the biggest, like, I guess the biggest hit of this whole thing is there goes EU Overwatch. But
outside of the
it's
Spitfire still exists.
still holding on, but that's pretty much that's a solid chunk of the European players in the league all dropped and probably not going to be picked up by anyone else.
No, I don't imagine so. And I mean, they now have a complete American roster for when they move to Vegas next year. And honestly, because these players have been playing the Junker Queen meta, I'd say that this new roster they're going to field starting this week is probably better than what they had.
Yeah, I think right off the bat, yeah.
Having them already have played the Junker Queen meta, and they're coming, and most of these players, in fact, I think all of them are coming from like the top 3 finishers in contenders on the A side of things. So it's like they were good in contenders as well. So this is definitely an upgrade now, and I think they're definitely going to be able to get some wins in the latter half of the season against the lower teams. I mean, because the current the most recent roster they had, yeah, that was not an inspiring performance that they put on this week. So I'm excited to see this new Paris roster. Full Americans. I'm pretty sure this is the only team that is all American, but they're called the Paris Eternal.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were the only team that played this week that didn't take a single map. Yeah,
I believe you're correct.
And one of those games was against the
Titans.
Against
the Titans, the winless Titans. So hopefully Paris does well. And the final piece of news is the beginning of the end for the Washington Justice. So the Justice trade Mag to the Boston Uprising, which is weird because Boston already have a main tank. So I wonder if that means something's going to happen to ITSAL within the next couple days. I don't know. Now, does this make a difference? No. Is Mag going to be starting? No, because Punk is fine. Punk looked good on the Junker Queen. So I guess they think Mag is just an upgrade over ITSAL. So if we go back to a main tank meta, then Mag would play the main tank. But if nothing happens to ITSAL, then this is just weird. And on top of that, they took all of Mag's salary, which couldn't have been like that cheap because, I mean, he was hyped up last year coming into the league. So kudos, Boston. I guess you picked up Mag. I don't know if he'll get any playtime this stage, but it does. Justice, as we said about last week, Justice are looking to offload their entire roster, and they did say, and Justice released their assistant coach, Tydola, and their GM deactivated his Twitter. Yeah, I don't know what Justice roster we're going to see next week. There are rumors that they're looking to pick up most of Team Peps from EU Contenders, which has players like FD God, Ben Best. But that roster finished like 5th in EU Contenders. So, I mean, if they get picked up, best of luck to you. But Justice it's not looking good.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And I don't even know how many of those players find a new home. Happy might find a new home. Decay might. I don't see Assassin finding another team.
The biggest problem is I don't know that any teams have holes that, like, even though Happy's probably better than what a lot of teams have, it's like, do they have the budget to pick him up?
Well, and it depends on what his contract. I don't know how big Happy's contract is. That's the thing. And I don't really see their backline. Vigilante might get picked up because he was touted as a really good flex support. And Kalios has looked okay, but overall, I don't know if any of these Justice players get picked up. I would be surprised if none of them do, especially with like Decay and Happy. If Happy doesn't find a team specifically, I'll be a little confused because he is definitely one of the more consistent players on this roster and has had every year he's been in the league, he's performed. So such is life. Beginning of the end for some of these teams, which
Yeah.
a lot of people will be like doomium, and they're like, oh, the league is folding. It's like, no. I mean, yeah, the Justice want to save on money, but literally no other team is like dropping their roster out of money. Paris had a terrible team, so they're trying to overhaul and get a new team. That's really it. Like, there's no other signs of anything else happening in the league that could point to, oh, everyone's pulling out. Like, not really. I think it kind of needs to chill.
I mean, I think things are, there isn't as much money in the league as there was, a couple of years ago. I don't think, and that's the reality of it. And I don't think it's the end of the world. And I think no matter what, like, we still have the rest of this season and all of next season. And, if for some reason things don't continue, much longer after that, then we'll deal with it when it comes. But I wouldn't get too doom and gloom because, like, I feel like since the start of esports, everyone's always thought like, oh, next year this isn't even going to exist. Or, everyone has said since the year after a game came out, like, oh, that game's dead. Like, that's just how these things go. And so I don't think it's worth freaking out about at this point.
All good. We're all still here.
Teams are going crazy.
No more Mayan doomsday prophecies. But enough about news. Let's actually talk about all the stuff that happened. Let's start by just briefly giving some thoughts. Some thoughts on the Blade Runner comp or the Royal Rush. And I refuse to call it what everyone else is calling it because honestly, Blade Runner sounds sick. I know last week I said Royal Rush, but Blade Runner sounds sick.
Here's my first thing. So last week we had a couple like prediction type things going into this week. One of them was, who would win what games. And we agreed on most of them. We disagreed on 3 of them. I was right on two out of them. 3.
Yeah.
The other thing, and so I said this in the context of London, but we had a conversation about a variation of the comp that swaps out Genji for Mei, and you were like, no, it's not going to happen.
I said it wasn't going to work, and it only works some of the time on very specific points.
Did work specific points. Some of the times, and it can work, and in your face.
I mean, anything can work on specific. I think it was mainly played. The main times that we saw it was pulled out on.
It was a few
on the Rio map once or twice, and then on Nepal Village as well. When on that point, and other than that, I don't think it was played a whole lot because
not much. It would occasionally come out. Usually didn't look great.
Yeah, because the issue with the Mei pick is like. And we saw when London tried to play their Rhine Rush, it's like the way that the Junker Queen comp works is like the Mei wall is used to separate somebody off. And typically, like the Junker Queen would be who you wall off. But because of the commanding shout, you just can't. You're not going to kill her by the time that wall goes down. She just commanding shout and just lives. And so, like the Mei comp, you lose so much damage from the Genji that unless you're walling off like a Brig or something, it's not really worth the trade. But on the maps where there's a choke that specifically works with Mei, that's where we saw it used.
Well, and I think one of the bigger issues with Mei is if you look at in terms of like the way the ult economy of this comp works, one of the biggest goals of the Genji is his ult forces out support ults.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, like a lot of times it's pretty common for Blades to not get kills with this meta just because, you have so many cooldowns that extend life.
Yeah.
You'll also see 700 health Genjis occasionally, and that is the most.
Reminds me of when we had 350 health Jonak in season 1 with armor stacking.
But yeah, so like a lot of times you see these Genji ults and it looks like they fall flat, but they do a good job of getting cooldowns out of the enemy team, and so that's one of the biggest things I feel like you miss out when you have the Mei.
Because you just run away from it. It doesn't force out anything.
And so her ult can get positioning, but it doesn't get cooldowns out, and it allows for the enemy team to engage harder than than you can.
Yeah, and what's difficult about this meta, and Reinforce was talking about this a little bit, is like it's so difficult to like tell why somebody won a team fight, because it's like it's hard to track the commanding shouts, because the only like visual cue is the health bars, because you have to be looking at both health bars, and then you have to be thinking of the cooldown. So when a fight initiates, you're like, do they have commanding shout? If yes, do they run? It was kind of difficult to tell why some teams are winning some fights on occasion. It did seem like a lot of the time the Briggs were the first ones to go down, and I think we mentioned that probably was going to be the case, because she just doesn't. She's just kind of a sitting duck if she's out of position. But what was nice, though, compared to watching contenders play this, is that because the DPS in the league are crazy, we got to see a lot of DPS play, which makes this meta more fun to watch than GOATs, because in GOATs there were just no DPS. And unlike in contenders, where it largely just seemed like two teams running into each other and it was just like someone's going to die eventually to something random, in here we were seeing like Genjis get like multi-kills with blades, Sojourns and Ashes were getting bob and railgun kills. So I'm happy that the DPS have been able to get value out of it. Now, would I want to see this for more than a stage? Please no. And I do not want to see this for another stage.
Yeah, me neither. Although, like, I will say one of the things that I like about it over GOATs is the fact that, like, GOATs was about forcing, like, just surviving longer than the enemy team, like out surviving the enemy team. This meta is more about enabling your DPS to survive long enough to pop off against the enemy team.
Yeah, because it's like the Junker Queens, there were so many times in these matches where it was like the Junker Queen would get down to like double-digit health. I'm like, oh, Junker Queen's dead. And then it's like, nope, just kidding, she's not.
Yeah.
GG, go next team fight.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. We did have that cursed 2.5 minute before the first fight on which map was that? That was on
it was Coliseum Shock Justice. It was literally all it was Happy and Kilo just charging up railgun and trying to get pot shots. And that was how the deadlock ended, was Kilo getting a pick, or maybe it was one of them. One of them got a pick on the other. But yeah, 2.5 minutes of nothing. They were just standing there and the bot had no idea what to do. So this meta has its ups and downs. It's fun currently, but after 4 weeks of this, I'm pretty sure we're all going to be tired of it. And that means the developers really need to create an Overwatch League specific patch to be put in at the end of this stage. Because if we see this again for Countdown Cup, I might lose it.
We're going to lose it.
But let's talk about the actual matches now, shall we?
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Let's start with two teams that we didn't think were going to be in this position after this week. Glads and Rain start 0-2. Now, granted, there's different reactions to both teams. I think Gladiators starting 0-2 isn't the end of the world, because I mean they did lose to like the 3rd and 4th ranked teams in NA. And it was in map 5, and they tried to reverse sweep both of them. Both Texas teams said, no, thank you. We don't want to be reverse swept by you, Gladiators. I mean, I don't think Gladiators should be worried. I do think it is interesting that we saw Shu come out on DPS on 2 maps. I think that needs to stop immediately. Patapon did say that he has a wrist injury or something on his stream, I think, and I think he tweeted about it as well, so that maybe that has something to do with it. But I don't know why they bring him for 1 map and then replace him with Ons, like whatever. And Reiner didn't look super comfortable on Junker Queen. I definitely think he was he didn't look as good as he did on other tanks. But I think the biggest thing for me is the backline. Like, coming into this, we were like, no, Funny Astro Skewed, are you kidding me? Like, these two are like the best in NA at the very least on these heroes. And they didn't look, they looked uncharacteristically okay.
Yeah, that being said, though, when it comes to the Gladiators, it's like they have the talent there. They just underperformed this week. And I think, it's a new meta. It's a different kind of play style. And, I don't think some of the Glad players are as happy about it. Like, I know, wasn't it Reiner
tweeted out and then deleted it, yeah.
And so he, for those that didn't see it before it was deleted, he tweeted out. I think we have it.
Sam tweeted the same thing. He was like, leave it to the developers to make like the silly comp where teams are able to take maps off of Shock and Glads that shouldn't otherwise be able to touch them.
So I think when it comes down to it, it's just like, I don't think the Glads love the meta and they aren't enjoying it. And when players aren't enjoying it, they don't play as well as they could. And I think teams like Dallas and Houston are able to take advantage of situations like that. So I think, are the Glads still the best team in the world? Yeah. If this was tournament, would they have won those? Yeah, I think so.
Probably. I think that I just watched that funny Astro Ajax. That was, anyways. I don't know if they're the best team in the world in this meta. Like generally, yes, but currently,
I think they will be.
I don't know. Shock looked really good this week, and I think that the Gladiators are having some growing pains. But granted, they did this in the kickoff clash as well, where they got reverse swept by Shock and Dallas early on. So I think that they need some time to get better at it. So currently, right now, I would say that they would still lose to Shock and like, I don't know, if Dallas and Glads played 10 times, it probably would be 6 times Glads, 4 times Fuel. But I don't think that Glads aren't the clear number one. But I wouldn't be worried about them. I think they're fine. And losing in map 5 to two top 5 teams in NA, I don't think there's anything to worry about for Glads. Now, on the other hand, Atlanta, now this team, this is worrying. When you lose that convincingly to Boston Uprising and then lose to the Toronto Defiance, who almost lost to the Vancouver Titans, I think this I might be a little worried about. Now, granted, Atlanta have been this season pretty average in the regular season and then just kind of pop off in playoffs. And I do think they were having the kind of problems we thought they would have. Like Ultraviolet not being on Ana, you can tell. Like, he doesn't look super comfortable on Brig. Hawk doesn't look super comfortable on Junker Queen. And Nero himself has said that he doesn't feel super confident on the Genji right now. So I think Atlanta's having just problems that we thought they might have coming into this kind of meta. And it showed. Yeah,
I think one of the arguments you could have is Boston looked a lot better against Atlanta than they have previously. That being said, Boston really didn't look great against London.
They didn't.
And London looked really bad against Florida.
Who looked really bad against Shock.
And so it's like, what's going on here? And then Toronto Defiant, you could say that.
Yeah, say the same thing.
Looking okay, but they went to map 5 against Vancouver. But Vancouver's looking a lot better. They 3-0'd Paris.
Who got 3-0'd by Justice, who took Shock to 5. So
yeah. So
what's happening?
No one knows what's going on.
It's a circle of suck.
Yeah. And so it's like, when it comes to the Atlanta Reign, one bad week in a split, like, I'll give it to you. It's whatever. If next week they come out and look as bad as they did this week, then I'd be worried.
Yeah, luckily for them, they do play the Paris Eternal this week. Now, granted, it's going to be a Paris Eternal that, even though it's like a newly built Paris Eternal, it's a Paris Eternal that have been playing this meta.
Yeah.
So if Atlanta doesn't steamroll Paris this week, I will be worried, because then next week, the week after, they play Outlaws and Spitfire. Even though Speedily does come of age, like the bright side for Rain is Speedily comes of age on the 26th before the second half of this stage for them. But is Speedily coming of age going to fix all of their problems? Like, will he be an upgrade over Nero? Probably, but I mean, he probably hasn't been.
Nero doesn't seem to be the problem.
No, and it's
right
like
now.
Speedily it definitely hasn't been screwing with the team. Who knows where his Overwatch 2 access has been? So it's like Atlanta needs this week. I think having a match against Paris this week will give them a breather and will allow us to see kind of how they're feeling. Because if they are able to 3-1 Paris or 3-0 Paris, we'll be like, okay, they're looking better. But if it goes to map 5 against Paris, then I will be concerned about this Reign team in this meta.
Yeah.
So
it'll be interesting to see.
So that's that. Now, a team that we did just mention, the Vancouver Titans, looking a lot better. kudos to the Titans. Yeah, granted, they did just dumpster roll over the 113 Paris Eternal. But, I mean, they went to map 5 against Toronto Defiant. And that's nothing to slouch at.
Yeah, especially considering Toronto Defiant, beat Atlanta Reign better than they beat Vancouver.
Better than they beat Vancouver, exactly.
So it's like Vancouver better than Atlanta this week?
Oh, no.
I'm just kidding.
I mean, King looked really good this week on the Genji. Aspire is still cracked out of his mind on the Sojourner. And Mir looks like he's comfortable on the Junker Queen, and then Masa Aztec. This team looks way better, and we were seeing it towards the tail end of the midseason madness. They were looking improved, and I think they do play some difficult opponents still, because they do play Outlaws and Spitfire, and I don't see them winning either of those games, unfortunately. But I think that this is definitely a step in the right direction. Like 3-0ing the next closest, the team that's supposed to be on the same level as you, definitely looks good. When you're able to 3-0, but if this Titans team played the new Paris Eternal, I don't think it would be a 3-0. But taking Toronto to 5, I think, is what says more about the Titans than their Eternal game, because Eternal just didn't perform.
I think this should be a pretty good tournament for them in terms of compared to the rest of the season. I mean, it already is. They have more wins.
They already have more wins, yeah.
This week than they have the rest of the season. And so I think, going forward, is this, a whole new step for Vancouver? Are they now in contention? No. But
it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and it's like they finally got their first win. It's kind of been coming for the last few weeks or so. The last month or so, they've started looking a little better, and it's like we knew at some point they'd get their win, and about time.
They stomped their first win.
Oh, yeah.
In convincing fashion. Now, I don't remember who they play this week. I do not believe it is.
Pull it up.
Pull up that schedule real quick. I do not believe that it's a super winnable game, but I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong. Because
it's New York.
Oh, okay. Well,
That's an interesting one. I think
New
York could lose it, but I don't think they will.
I don't think they will. I don't think Yaki will let them lose that one.
Yeah.
And we don't have New York on the docket, but New York, mainly because New York did this before when they took Outlaws and Fuel to 5 in the midseason madness, and then came back around and continued to be terrible. So I don't know, whatever. But it's New York or New York. I think we need to give New York another week to see, are they for real? And I think if they can convincingly beat the Titans, I think that'll say that they're at least a middle tier team, at the very least. Now, let's take some time and talk about our favorites. We have to talk about Outlaws and Spitfire. Both went 1-1 this week. I would say they both had interesting losses. Outlaws getting reverse swept, Spitfire getting kind of ganked by the Mayhem. But then they turned it around against the Uprising. So it was interesting because, I mean, we had talked about with the Spitfire what we said in the Mayhem match. We're like, if they have to come out and Backbone has to be on Genji, it's over.
Yeah.
And that was the case in the Mayhem. That was the case in the Mayhem match. But then they went up against Uprising, and it was the complete opposite. And now, granted, when you're playing against Valentine, who I would put on a similar level to Backbone on the Flex DPS, then you have a little bit of a fair matchup.
Yeah, and I think, the thing London's going to really struggle with this meta is if Backbone has a really bad matchup, like if the enemy team has a really good Genji player, I think Backbone's not going to be able to keep up. And I think Boston didn't have that.
No.
And so it wasn't an issue. I think Florida did kind of have that with Checkmate, and that's why they lost. And so I think London going forward, this is going to be a hard stretch. This is going to be a test.
This is going to really be a test for London.
And
if
so
they're a real team.
Yeah, and it's like, that being said, they destroyed the Boston that beat Atlanta. So
London better than Atlanta currently?
Obviously Boston's not a terrible team. So going 3-0 against Boston, that shows, London can play this meta, but I think they can. They have to have the
right kind of matchup. They'll have difficulty punching up, But if they punch down, they could pretty easily punch down. And I think what London, and we saw it in the week, was them realizing that this rush comp is not like the other rush comp. Because we saw them try and play the Reinhardt against Mayhem, and it did not work at all. Good. And I think they just needed a second to realize that they cannot play. These two rushes are not the same. Like, they operate similarly, but the Rein rush was literally just separate a target and run them down. This comp is about cooldown management and rushing as a team and hoping your DPS can get picks.
Well, and also, if you are running Rein into Junker Queen, you're just setting yourself up to fail. The Junker Queen ult is like
Rein gets rolled.
Rein counter. Rein and his entire team, because think about that, like, you're running Rein comp, you're
grouped
up, grouped up, and you work as a unit. And Junker Queen's ult, if you're grouped up, you die. Your entire team is just gone.
Because you're not running Lucio Brig with a Reinhardt. You're relying on the Ana.
Yeah.
But when you're all antied, Ana can't do jack. But I will say, London did play Bastion on Dorado, and I respect that.
Yeah.
I respect the backbone Bastion. Now,
I think we saw Bastion a couple times briefly.
I think was it Mayhem?
Someone brought it out.
I think Mayhem brought it out on Junkertown.
Yeah,
I think Mayhem brought it up against.
And
Shock.
it was like
throwback.
One fight. It was like 2 seconds.
The good old Junker. Do you remember the Junkertown pirate ship? Yeah, I don't. No thanks. Get me out of here.
Good times.
Spitfire performing well, and then the Houston Outlaws doing. The most Outlaws thing ever, getting reverse swept by New York and then beating the Gladiators. Welcome to the Houston Outlaws, ladies and gentlemen. That being said, I don't think that the loss to New York is that egregious because reverse sweeps are a different kind of beast. You and I were talking about it. It's like we've all had those matches on like 2CP where we finish with like a 6-minute time bank. The enemy team's finished with 30 seconds, and then we proceed to lose the match. Like, once Dorado happened, once New York was able to get that overtime push, it was over. I think from that point, momentum shifted entirely, and the Outlaws just didn't look the same. And it was said in the post-match interview, New York, I don't remember who was being interviewed, but they said, like, New York was saying, like, they picked up the tempo and recognized they were just getting run over. Outlaws were setting the pace, and so New York decided to turn that and started setting the pace, and then Outlaws just couldn't keep up with the tempo. But like a reverse sweep, it gets in your head, and you start messing about. And I think New York looks good when Yaki's able to just permanently play Genji, and they have an actual main support on Lucio, and Kellen looks really good on the Junker Queen. I don't think that the loss to New York is terrible. And to be fair, Doge looked really good despite playing from Europe.
Well, and if you look at the Dorado map, before it went terribly wrong, it had some amazing stuff by the Outlaws. Like that
5-minute time bank.
Yeah, it was, I believe it was the second or third fastest push on Dorado in the history of the Overwatch League. And it was two out of 5 of the players' first match in the Overwatch League, and they're setting records. So I think even though they lost the match, I think that's one of those things that comes with experience, comes as you kind of get rid of those big stage nerves and stuff. Like I think going forward, this is really good things for Houston, and I think I'm not worried at all about them.
And we saw them turn around the Gladiators match. They decided to play Dante the whole time, which honestly, if I'm this stage, Dante should just permanently be playing. I imagine they put Doge in because they thought that the New York match was going to be a little easier, give him some playing experience. So, I mean, I respect that decision. Yeah. But I think Dante's just a freak and looked really good on the Junker Queen against the Gladiators. Like, he definitely diffed Reiner in the Junker Queen head-to-head.
Yeah.
And I think that Lep looked really good on the the Outlaws won with May on Village. Okay.
Hey.
I think Lep looked really good on the Lucio. He was fragging out throughout the match. And yeah, like you said, I'm not worried about the Outlaws either. They look really comfortable in this meta. And when Pelican doesn't have to just play Tracer and is able to play Genji, and Merit is able to play Sojourn, those are like their two. That's like the dream DPS lineup for them. Is able to play that. And Dante was playing really well on the Junker Queen. So I think Outlaws moving forward, I definitely have way more confidence about the Outlaws than the Spitfire because I have question marks about the Spitfire and their like DPS matchups specifically. And then whereas the Outlaws, they just kind of got unlucky and got in their own heads. But I think the win over the Gladiators gives them a huge confidence moving forward.
It almost happened twice, which is the really terrible thing. If they had gotten reverse swept by the Gladiators, it would have felt so bad.
Look, if we're being honest, they really should have. They really should have been reverse swept. Gladiators beefed that last fight so badly. But I mean, we were watching it together, and it was such a good match. Like, this is definitely up there and one of the best matches this season. It was such a good one. Both teams were just trading throws.
Well, especially because like the other, like if you look at the matches, the 2 matches before and the 2 matches after, they were 3-0s.
Yeah, they weren't great.
And so it was so nice to have like
a banger,
just a really good match in the middle.
And what's funny is if you ignore Gladiators league points, Outlaws and Glads are tied in regular season record, 10-4. But Gladiators have 17 league points. That's, you know, those 8 points from the 2 tournaments really carrying the Gladiators right now.
Yeah, they're guaranteed playoffs.
I believe that if they lost all of their remaining matches this season, they would at least be guaranteed play-ins.
Yeah, that's
so the Gladiators are fine. The final team I want to talk about though is the Dallas Fuel. They look like they might be back. They might be back a little bit.
Yeah, and remember when I was like, yeah, I think the Fuel have a chance of popping up this next tournament, and you were like, no, they aren't going to.
I didn't know that they would because I had questions about their DPS, but Edison looks good on the Sojourn. And it was interesting that for the Glads match, they decided to play Doha the whole time. But then when they played New York, Sparkle came back in. I don't really know why, but I mean,
but they both looked
really good.
The fact that they have that and they can bring either one in, like, it's
and like allowing.
And I think if anything, the first, couple weeks of tournament cycle, you're still trying to figure out, okay, what players do we want to play what? How are we going to make this meta work for us? And so I think experimenting, giving both players a chance to kind of show off what they can do is good on a team level.
Yeah, both had a really good performance, and allowing Chiho to play Lucio again is great. And Hanbin is insane.
Crazy.
He's channeling back the kickoff clash Zarya stuff. His Junker Queen was definitely the best of the weekend. 100%. Hanbin's Junker Queen was crazy.
And I think that's something that neither of us really.
No, we did. I wasn't sure how.
But it makes sense,
because
sense. If you look at Zarya and Junker Queen in a lot of ways are very similar.
They're both very aim dependent.
They're very aim dependent. They also it's a lot of cooldown management and knowing how to use your cooldowns to help not just you but the rest of your team, and positioning in a way that you can best support your team.
Yeah.
And then, with really powerful ults that you don't want to screw up. And so I think, he has what it takes. And I think going forward, I don't think there's anyone else that really is at his level in terms of
Hanbin, I think, is clear the best Junker Queen. And honestly, Fuel looked like the best team this weekend. Because even though Shock beat all over Mayhem, they did go to 5 against Justice, which doesn't look great.
Yeah.
Granted, Justice maybe they're a better team than we give them credit for, but I mean, Fuel just looked far and above because they beat Glads and then they dunked on New York for the most part. So I think Dallas honestly looks like at least a top 3 in this meta. Currently they look really good, and I think that them and Outlaws this week showed that they are probably up them. Dallas, Houston, and Shock look like the most comfortable in this meta currently because Glads are still going through some growing pains. Atlanta looks lost in the sauce. And London has question marks in terms of how well they can match up against better teams.
So the interesting thing is, okay, it's really early, but this tournament cycle, Dallas could actually win it.
What's the remaining schedule?
Sorry, you cut out for a second. What was that?
Their remaining schedule? What do we got?
I don't know. Let's look.
Because I believe that they play. Actually, I don't know off the top of my head. They could win it.
Okay. Upcoming matches: Toronto Defiant, easy.
Win.
Boston
win.
Should be a win. Florida
win.
Should be a win. The Shock.
Oh, okay. Now see that one.
And that's the last one they have.
So I think that Shock game is going to determine whether Shock or Fuel go undefeated this stage. And they will probably. I mean, that is 3 weeks away. So the meta is not going to shift, but team powered could change a little bit because unlike Kickoff Clash, where there were several different metas that could be played, this one is just going to be this one. And so I don't imagine that it's really just going to be a direct matchup in terms of power level moving forward. And I think whoever wins that matchup will probably be the favorites to win the Summer Showdown. Unless Gladiators just level up.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Gladiators. It's like they've won the last two.
They've won the last two. So you can't count them out.
Yeah. Even if they didn't look great, only the Gladiators could go 0-2 this first week and us still be like,
they could still probably win.
We'll probably win. Yeah, it's
man. So matches this week were fun. We now have 7 teams tied at 1-1, all within 3 map differential of each other, and the standings are exactly as we thought. Washington Justice and the Vancouver Titans sitting on top, of course, as we thought, easy. As expected. But let's do some actual rankings. I forgot to change the title. It's not pre-Summer Showdown. Forget the pre. It's just Summer Showdown. Wait. Hang on. I can fix this. I'm doing live editing. Hold on. Summer Showdown week 1 power. It's so janky. Hold up. And there it is. You didn't see a thing. It's all fine. So, power rankings for week 1. Now, the question is, how do we want to do these? Do we want to do them just based off of this meta? Because this is the meta that's going to be played. 100%. Yeah, so flexibility of other metas doesn't mean jack right now.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's just
based
go 100%
on this week. So, Glads are not number 1.
No. So the question is, do we put Fuel number 1 because they look the best?
They look the best, but they did. See, they played New York, and they played a struggling Glads. Yeah. So I think that comes down to how much credit do we give New York? Like Dallas are at least 2. It's really like, do we put them above Shock or below Shock? It's Shock, Fuel, and Shock beat down on the Mayhem. They rolled the Mayhem.
Went 5 on Justice.
And then they went to 5 on Justice, but it's like, how good is Justice? And unfortunately...
Well, obviously not good, because they're all getting dropped.
And unfortunately, we don't know how good the Justice are going to be, because this roster probably won't exist after this week.
Yeah, and so we'll never be able to
So we never know. I will say that Hanbin looked way better than Kaluge did.
Yeah.
And I think Chio Fielder probably has the advantage over Violet Finn because Chio's actually a Lucio player and Violet is not.
But I do think
the rest proper Kilo I think beats the Dallas Fuel DPS line.
Yeah, and I think they beat the Dallas Fuel line more than the rest of Dallas.
Yeah, so I think just for the sake that it is the Shock, I think Shock can be 1. I think Shock 1, Fuel 2. Let me remove this tier break. And then I don't think you can make any other argument than Outlaws 3.
Yeah.
I think you do Outlaws 3 and then Glads 4. And then I think who do you put 5? Do you put New York? Do you put Toronto? I think you'd put Toronto at 5. But then again, they went to 5. But they went to 5 against Titans. So I think it really is. Do we think that it should be New York or do we think it should be London? Like
I don't think we've seen enough of London. I feel like we have a good idea of what New York is
capable of.
I don't think we have that for the Spitfire.
Yeah, because Spitfire played a lower team and then a similar team and got rolled by the similar team and stomp the lower team. So I think you put I think you put Florida 5. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it,
Florida and then
Florida
New York.
and then New York, and then I think you do Defiant, Spitfire, Reign.
In that order?
In that order?
Man, poor Reign. They're getting pushed down.
They look tragic this week.
Yeah, and I think that could change.
I hope it changes, and these power rankings will probably drastically change next week because these are
just based off
these
of
are
what
React.
we've seen.
These are React power rankings. And then I would do Reign. Oh, but I feel like we have to put Boston. I feel like we have to put Boston above Reign, don't we? I mean, they rolled Reign.
Yeah.
But then they got slapped around by Spitfire, though. You think there's a tier break between Spitfire and Reign? Or Spitfire and Uprising? Because if but it's like if Reign played Spitfire, I feel like there might be a Genji diff there.
Yeah. I think London goes under the I think between Defiant and Spitfire is where the tier break is, because you have teams that can play the comp somewhat at a proficient level. Well, and then you have teams that we don't know.
Well, if we think there's a tier break between Defiant, where does that place Titans? Where do we think that? I mean, where do we think this Titans team is? Because they went to 5 against Toronto and then just dumpster rolled Paris.
Yeah, so I think they go above Paris. That's for sure.
Well, they're already above Paris.
Yeah, and so I don't know that we can move them any higher.
Do we think this current Titans team could beat Boston? Like Aspire, I think Aspire is better than Victoria, and I think Punk Mirror would trade a little evenly. I think it would come down to King versus Valentine, and I think King looked pretty good this week.
He did look pretty good. So yeah.
Do we want to put Titans above Uprising? Well,
let's go crazy.
But then where does Reign go? Reign did lose to Uprising, but if Reign played Spitfire, they could win. It's weird. I think Spitfire, Reign, Uprising, Titans are kind of like all in this weird. Even though Titans didn't play these 3 teams, I think Titans could compete with them. So I think Titans are like maybe below Boston, but I think could compete with them. Now what do we want to do about Justice? Because this roster probably is not going to exist in a couple days.
Well, and that's the thing. So they go like 5 tier breaks under
everybody else,
Paris,
because they're an enigma.
They don't exist.
They don't exist. If we were rating this Justice team, though, I would say they'd go above Mayhem at the very least, if not above Glads, because they took Shock to 5. Yeah. But we can't rate them. And then Paris Eternal this week looked terrible, but I think their new roster coming in, they could compete with Titans, Uprising, Reign, Spitfire. Yeah. I think they could.
And I think they're down with Justice, where it's like they don't exist. So
because they haven't played?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
this is the Enigma tier. The Enigma tier of we don't know what these teams look like. Got it. Okay. Do we want to pre-pred APAC?
Does anything change from what we've
Charge goes above Valiant.
Yeah.
And I think no, I don't think you remove the tier break. I think the discussion comes down to, do we think Spark is going to be better than Dynasty? Because I think that the Spark DPS line is the best potentially in the world, and they get to literally play their best heroes permanently. You get permanent. I mean, you get permanent Shy, Ashe, Sojourn, and you get permanent Alpha Yi, Genji.
But I feel like there are 2 sides of this comp. There are 3 sides. There's tank, DPS, and support. No, what it comes down to though, it's like most of these team fights. So there are 2 ways a team fight will really get going. Mm-hmm. Either they'll get a pick on one of the supports, usually is the one that gets picked, or the map the fight will go on long enough that finally the Junker Queen dies. But usually it's like one of the supports gets picked off. And so the question is
Super Rich Irony versus
yeah,
Creative
and so
Vindime.
Will Super Rich and Irony get picked off less than...
Yeah, but then you have to think about who's doing the picking. Who do you think is going to pick more, Shy or Stalker / Fitz?
But it's like but it's not a straight up those guys against those guys. It's Fitz and Stalker against Super Rich Irony, and then
Shy versus Vindame Creative. Honest, I mean, Shy is the best Sojourn in the world, though. Like, he is... After this mid-season, he is definitely the best hit scan in the world that we have seen so far. And I would definitely put more money on Shy getting a first pick versus Fitz or Stalker getting a first pick. And I definitely would put more money on Alpha Yi's Genji than Prophet's. Because Prophet's best hero is Tracer. And unfortunately, Tracer is not playable right now in this meta.
And also, I don't know that Smurf's going to be the best Junker Queen. Like, I think he'll be able to pull it off, but I don't think it's going to be his best.
I think that the best tanks on these heroes are going to be either Hyperflex, are going to be off tanks primarily, because the off tanks have historically just been more aim, related. Yeah. And Smurf is a main tank player. Not that I think his aim is bad, but Bernard is an off tank player. So theoretically, his aim should be slightly better if he's been playing Zarya and D.Va. So
yeah, I could see Spark.
I think maybe we leave it and we give it a week, because I do think that the way that the teams are ranked currently will be how things play out, because these top 5 teams are going to take swings at each other, and like, because of how the meta is going, Hunters are still getting away with their roster. I don't know how. They keep doing it, but they keep being okay with the roster they have. And honestly, if Hunters don't make the Summer Showdown, I'll be a little surprised.
Yeah.
This is like the perfect meta for them. Jinmu can just permanently play Genji.
Gotta love that team.
Oh, man. All right.
Side note, so I never play DPS, right?
Okay.
But randomly, I've just been playing some casual DPS games.
Mm-hmm.
Using up all of those
the priority passes.
Priority passes, yeah, which I had never used. I'd never dropped below 40 on those, and I used like all of them up. But the last couple days, I've been playing Genji, and oh my gosh, what a fun character! Like, I had never touched Genji. I had like a total of like less than an hour of Genji.
My goodness.
And I started playing some Genji.
No way.
And he is so fun. I was playing him and I was like, why does any DPS player play anything else? I love that guy. It was so fun.
Oh, well, then you're probably loving this meta. Permanent 99%. Well, not 99% Genji pick rate, but like, 80, 90% Genji pick rate. Okay. Now, it's time for some predictions, which I also forgot to change. Why am I just dumb? Why do I forget to change some things? Hold up. It's not week 15. Week 16. That was easy. It was easy to change.
I feel like there are a lot of traps this week.
You're only saying that because of how this week went.
Yeah.
What's funny is we are 68 matches into the season. We are halfway in a week, and somehow we have managed to stay tied at a 66% pick rate. Every time one of us pulls ahead, the other one just comes back. Like this week, you only got one more pred than I did, and then like during kickoff clash, you had 2 or 3 more than I did, and I clawed back thanks to some outlaws. It was, I don't know. So this week there is a chance for one of us to pull ahead, and luckily, I think NA is pretty predictable this week overall. Like, there aren't any matches. I mean, there aren't too terribly we said that about last week, but this week it's like, based off last week's performances, there aren't any that really could be upset. There are just maybe some close ones, but even those. But we have a certain Asian region that loves just not knowing what it wants to do with its power dynamics starting this week. Welcome back to the fray, APAC. Please boom our preds for us. So, first match on the docket. It concerns the teams we were just talking about. Dynasty play the Spark. How pred thee?
think it's got to be the Spark this match.
I also think it's going to be the Spark. And Arnis, I think it comes down to... I think Shy and Alpha E are just going to be better.
Yeah, I think a lot of it will come down to that. And then I do think Bernard's going to be pretty good on the Junker
Yeah,
Queen.
it's like if
assuming APAC's running Junker Queen, because you never know with APAC.
It's been through the grapevine. I think Avril has said that the Scrimbucks Exchange has APAC playing Junker Queen, and if APAC's playing Junker Queen, we're all doomed. If the Chengdu Hunters are playing the meta, it's all over.
Oh, that's true. Although this meta is so wacky, it kind of fits them.
If the Chengdu Hunters are playing what everyone else is playing, this is a 99% pick rate meta. I think if Dynasty win this, it's going to be because, like you said, it's going to be because Super Rich and Irony are getting picked. I think that's really going to be what it comes down to. But I think Shy and Alpha E are going to do more of the picking. So, okay, we agree on that one. How about this next one? This next one, I feel like before last week was an interesting match, but I feel like now this could be a roll. For everyone unaware, the stakes for this match are a potential tie for the most regular season wins in a row. Shock versus Gladiators. If Shock win this, they tie the Vancouver Titans from 2019 of most regular seasons wins in a row. And I don't see how Gladiators win this. Shock will take it. You?
I hate this because it's like...
do you think the Gladiators will perform better or not?
Yeah, and I think the Shock have the better team for this meta. That being said, it's the Glads. You can't count them out.
I mean, last time they played in a regular season, Shock won anyways.
Yeah, and that's true, but the Glads are so freaking good. But I'm still going to go Shock. I think just with the meta being what it is and with the Glads' performance this week, you can't
say anything otherwise. Yeah. So if Shock win this, they will tie Vancouver Titans 2019. I think it's 19 wins in a row. I could be wrong. It's still funny that 3 seasons later, the Shock are still chasing their rivals from 2019. Even though that same team has 1 win. I hope Shock get that. I mean, honestly, if Shock win this match, I don't know what team could take them down except Dallas. Here's what I'm going to... If Dallas don't beat Shock in the final week of the Summer Showdown, I'm going to say it. Shock are going to go undefeated this season.
The rest of the season?
Because,
the whole season in regular season? Yeah,
regular season. Because, I mean, if Dallas are if Glads don't beat... If Shock win this match and then Dallas lose, and if Shock are able to beat Glads and Dallas this season, I don't see how any team in the Countdown Cup is going to be able to beat Shock. Because
I mean, we'd have to see the meta.
Yeah, but I feel like at that point, Shock will be playing for the perfect season. Whereas other teams will be like, oh, we've locked in our playoff spot. We can take it off a little bit. Shock will see okay, we have 6 matches left. Let's go for the first ever undefeated season in the Overwatch League. And I feel like they'd be motivated to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of pushing for that. I would love to see Shock win 24 matches. That'd be awesome.
Would be.
All right, now we return back to APAC. Dragons versus Spark. I feel like if we pred Spark for Dynasty, I don't feel like there's any reason for any Spark against Dragons. That being said, Dallas looking good this meta does look okay for Dragons and potentially looking good because I feel like Dragons and Fuel had the same kind of issues of shot calling. I would imagine Void will be the one playing the Junker Queen. I also assume Who Are You will be permanently in the lineup playing Genji over Fleta. And Lip is no slouch. And I mean, Lee Jae Gon gets to play Lucio again. So there's that. Fun. But honestly,
I just don't think.
But Shy and Alpha E. Shy Alpha E. So we both take Spark. And then the final APAC match, Hunters versus Fusion. This could be a fun one. But I think Fusion take it.
I'm going with the Hunters.
All right, here's our split decision. I understand why you take the Hunters because this is literally their meta. But I think MN3 and Zest MN3 may just go crazy.
Yeah, and that's the thing about the Fusion. The Fusion are the most infuriating team because it's like when they're popping off, they are popping off like no one. You know, like
Yeah.
they have some of the highest highs, but they aren't consistent with
And
it.
then sometimes they can just lose to the Valiant.
That being said, the Chengdu also, like Chengdu Hunters, they aren't known for their consistency. But it's like I feel like Junker Queen meta, it's kind of weird. Anyone can take wins off of
What
anyone else.
worries me
And
about
I
the
think
Junker Queen meta is I imagine Fury is going to play the Junker Queen, but for the Hunters, who are you putting on Junker Queen? Are you putting Gaga on it? I don't know how confident I would be in Gaga on the Junker Queen. And then their other, who the heck? Why am I? Daisy. Is it Daisy?
No, just die.
Just die. I don't know who they're going to be putting on the Junker Queen. Like, I'm not worried about their DPS line. I'm sure that they're back, like Far Away and Monk are a great back.
Oh, that's weird.
I mean, they're back.
It is Daisy, but he's listed as die on.
Yeah, and like their back line, I'm not worried about their back line. It's like I don't know who's going to play Junker Queen for them.
Yeah.
I think Fusion, Bellisria could play it technically, but I think it'll probably be Fury playing the Junker Queen. And I think Zest, M3 this is our split though. This is a good one.
And I think Hunters, if anything, like if any team's gonna find some weird crap that can somehow like I feel like if anyone's gonna make something weird, like
Jinmu's gonna come out on Pharah or something.
Yeah. So which actually could potentially work in the right situation.
Yeah, but I feel like you don't want to be pulling out Pharah when MN3 is on the other side.
Yeah.
On Ashe.
But I mean, Jinmu's made weirder things work. So it's like with the Hunters, it's like just because like I feel like it's a new meta. People are still figuring it out. If the Hunters are able to like figure out some way to counter it, like if any team's gonna do it, it's gonna be Chengdu. So it's like I think either way, whether they're playing meta or off meta, I
can respect the Hunters pick. I was on the fence about it, and I'm looking at Fusion's midseason madness performance from MN3 and stuff, kind of as the benchmark here. But I mean, Hunters have a lot to play for. And now, for the marquee matchup of the week, that honestly, after this week's performances, may not be as close as both of us would have liked. Spitfire are playing the Outlaws again, round 2. Run it back. The first time they played, it was a 3-0 Outlaws, and Outlaws won playing the Rhine Mirror. Fun fact.
Don't want to talk about it.
Not a completely unbiased pick, honestly, though. I don't see how Spitfire win this, because Backbone versus Pelican, that's not very fair.
Well, I think when it comes down to it, Spitfire are going to win.
No, oh my goodness.
You might think, oh, why are they going to win? How could they possibly win this? They're the way worse team, which correct on all of those counts. But remember when we were talking about Outlaws Glads last week and you were all like, oh, the Glads have no way of losing this. They totally beat the Outlaws. And I was like, no, I have a feeling the Outlaws, well, do you know what? I willed the Outlaws to win. And now I'm willing the Outlaws to lose. And the Outlaws, they're going to lose. They're going to get their butts kicked. Spitfire for the win. Spitfire 2022 in your face. Yeah. Chatty for president. Yeah.
This is complete copium, though, right?
It's actual reality. Just wait for it. Wait for it. And next week, we're gonna come back, and Spitfire will have won, and you're gonna look so stupid, and it's gonna be great. And I'm so excited.
If Outlaws lose this, it'll be because they beat themselves, not because Spitfire beat them. Let's just be honest. If Outlaws lose this, it'll be because they throw the match in some dumb way.
They could.
They can throw any match.
They're gonna get reverse swept. They're gonna like set world records. The first 2 maps, they'll have like the best score, best time, just absolutely destroy the Spitfire. 3rd map, they just get stomped, and it's gonna be the rest of the match Spitfire. It's gonna be a 3-2, but it's gonna feel like a 3-0 by the end because Outlaws are gonna just hate life.
Oh man, what's funny is that this is the only game these 2 teams are playing this week, so they literally are only preparing for each other. And I'm being honest, the Outlaws are probably not taking the Spitfire as seriously as they probably should. But then again, it's the only match this week. So I don't know why I would imagine they all prep into it. I think what it'll come down to is if they decide to play Doge or Dante. If they don't play Dante, then that'll show us what Outlaws think of the Spitfire.
Do we know when Doge is
getting to the US? I would imagine as soon as possible. I don't imagine we have a date.
I imagine at this point they still play Dante.
No, I imagine as long as Junker Queen is meta, Dante should permanently be the one playing because he's the better Junker Queen. Like, even if Doge is in the US, Dante is just a freak and should just be playing it. I think Doge is on the roster for when actual tanks become meta again, and Dante can't just play Junker Queen and Doomfist. And Dante versus Hottie? Sorry, Hottie. This is not Reinhardt.
Hey, Hottie is known for his excellent aim.
Of course, the Reinhardt
pure
hammer,
mechanical skills,
the hammer hit accuracy. No, I'm excited for this match just because it is our personal grand finals.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it.
I think probably what this will come down, because Sparker's crazy. I think Sparker is going to probably be able to keep up with Merit. Yeah. Maybe not all the way, but at least be able to hold his weight. But Backbone versus Pelican, that's just not fair.
Yeah, I think some of it will also come down to maps. Like, certain maps favor the Spitfire, but I don't think you can rely on that.
I mean, when especially when Junker Queen is played on every single map. Like when Junker Queen's played on Gibraltar, you know it's over. You're like, oh no, not even the dive map gets to escape.
It's terrible.
So it's complete Junker Queen, and Spitfire. I mean, they got toasted by the Mayhem. I mean, they beat the Boston Uprising, but I feel like that was just a favorable matchup for them. And I mean, if Spitfire are able to beat the Outlaws, well, then there we go.
Think about this. Think about this, though.
Oh, I'm thinking.
My prediction is just
pure copium.
Better. No, it's better.
Pure copium.
And listen, this is why. The reason why it's better is if I'm wrong. Yeah, that's to be expected.
It's expected.
Like, being a Spitfire fan is great because if you lose, you
aren't expected to do well with your D tier budget.
Yeah, but if you win, if they win this game against the Outlaws, it feels good. And so it's like I'm playing for
you're playing the
biggest
mind
ever,
games.
Well, it's like it's a win-win for me. Like they lose, and it's like. Yeah, they were supposed to lose. It's the Outlaws. But if they win, oh my gosh.
If they win, at that point, if they win, it's like, it's the Outlaws. It's like, it was either outcome. It's like, it's the Outlaws.
That's true.
either outcome, win or loss. You can just look at that and be like, that was Houstonable.
Yeah, but
I think the only way you walk away from that feeling bad is if Spitfire get toasted. If they get dumpster fired 3-0'd, you walk away from that going, oh no. And I don't think that'll happen. I think London should be able to. I mean, they took a map off Mayhem, didn't they?
No,
I thought it was a 3-1.
Wait, let me pull it. I can't remember. I blocked that map. I think it was a 3-0.
Oh no.
But let me pull it up. Oh no, you're right.
I was like, London were able to take a map, so I think realistically, London probably will take a map off Outlaws because, as we've established before, Outlaws don't know how to 3-0 opponents like ever. So Spitfire will get a free map. I'm hoping it's like map 2, so that we don't have to worry about a reverse sweep. Because as soon as we get into that territory, oh my goodness, here we go again. But
One interesting thing, and this is random side note, but I was just looking at the Mayhem Spitfire match.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't push as far as like you look at every other match this week, as far as I can think of, like teams were full pushing everything, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a very offensive benefited meta, and yet like Hollywood was an 0-1, Gibraltar was a 2-1. Like these teams just didn't push.
Yeah,
kind of crazy.
All right,
so I wonder if that's. But anyway,
play of the week. It's time to end on play of the week, and I picked what I thought was actually, and I mentioned, and I went nuts when we were watching this happen live, and that is Outlaws Glads, almost final fight on Nepal when Merit somehow pulls a team fight out of his butt. It was the second to last.
It was crazy.
Like, if Outlaws lose this fight, it's over. Like, it was over. Glads were at 90%. Pelican lives with like 50 health. And Merit gets like 4 kills. They trade evenly, and Merit against all odds kills like a full health. Like, Kevster's running after him, Reiner's running after him, everyone's running after him in Lep, and they just live. I don't let me see. I'm looking at this health bar. How much health does Merit have? Dude, he's got no more than like 50 health. It was crazy. I mean, there were so many crazy moments during this match when Reiner went just turbo-inting off of the map off a boop, and then the Outlaws still lose the fight. Or when the Glads run in with the ult advantage and then just beef. There were lots of funny things taking place in this year match. Many.
Yeah, it was
but it was a good game.
It was a wild one.
It was definitely a very good game, and honestly, it's like Merit is crazy.
Yeah.
Continues to be one of the best Sojourns in the league, which is awesome. That feels good. All right, enough talk. We've been talking for long enough. First week was chaos. I'm hoping week 2 is not chaos. And once again,
week 1 for APAC.
Once again, we're lined up to probably still be tied in Preds next week. Woohoo! We're run tied again. Enough of that, though. Hopefully, everybody enjoys another week of Blade Runner comp. I like that name better than Royal Rush. Blade Runner just sounds really cool, and I hope maybe the Hunters will pull something silly out. Probably not, but we're probably cursed to see Junker Queen for the next 3.5 weeks.
Woohoo!
Oh no, the end is nigh. Enjoy the matches this week. We will see you all next week.